Greetings fellow Decepticons, this is Soundblaster1987, continuing my Transformers Animated Deluxe eBay trilogy with Deluxe Blurr. Blurr was one of the final wave figures released in the animated line, and he had a bland repaint, a black repaint called Vortex Blurr, which was sadly cancelled. Annoying, because that would have made it much easier for the Radicons on TFW 2005 to make a Batman costume out of him. Because just look at this thing. This is definitely a Cybertronian / futuristic cartoon inspired Batmobile type vehicle. Much more sleek and streamlined than Cybertron Megatron was. Go back and see my review of him for what I mean about that. Anyway, in vehicle mode, Blurr rolls pretty well. Although he does tend to turn left when being pushed forward. And pressing this button on the hood causes a spring-loaded energy chainsaw to pop out. I can only assume from how low it is that he is intending to take out the Constructicon's treads with this thing, because it's too low to take out normal tyres, or anything else for that matter. So I assume this will be the best defense against Shockwave and Scrapper, but little else. Anyway, for size comparisons, here is Animated Blurr with Takara Legends Titans Return Blurr, the closest alternative I currently have to the G1 design at this point in time. Last week's review subject, Jazz. The Takara Tomy version of Cybertronian mode Ratchet, who we'll cover next week. And finally, Generation Sandstorm in Dune Buggy mode. As you can see, Sandstorm is a Voyager class, the next size up from a Deluxe, so he is understandably bigger in all dimensions than Blurr. But that will change very quickly once we get to robot mode. Now, to transform Blurr, begin by popping the hood off. This is very G1 accurate in its parts forming nature, because this will form a shield later. Next, disconnect the back wheels from the panel below the canopy. Double hinge the canopy panel back now to save time. Bring the knees forward to free up space. Next, you will need to maneuver the arms free from the sides of the windows. For the Autobot Sonic the Hedgehog, he sure is slow to transform. Next, move the shoulders out of the way. Theo Adams wasn't kidding when he said this guy transforms pretty much the opposite to what you'd expect. Everything on this guy is pretty much backwards. Whoop. Speaking of Theo Adams, I'll post a link to his review of Blurr in the description below. Once the arms and legs are separated from each other, turn the figure around, spin the rear wheels 180 degrees and split the tail lights to become the feet and heel spurs. Long nails are recommended for this job. Once the legs are in place, spin the shoulders around so that the headlights are pointing upwards. Use the bicep swivel to bring the arms in so the elbows are oriented the correct way. On my copy, for some reason, the shoulders don't want to lock in robot mode, but hopefully your copy won't have that issue. Finally, bring the head around, and Blurr is in robot mode. Again, Blurr is sleek, thin, and definitely looks like a speedster. I can see why people on DeviantArt have painted this guy red as a Flash transformer as well as black as a Batman one. Now, for articulation, Blurr's head is on a ball joint for 360-degree rotation, slight sideways wiggling and a little bit of forward back, as well as a hinged stalk for the neck to give him a long slim neck that he had in the cartoon. Shoulders are on universal swivel hinges. The bicep swivel goes almost 360 degrees, except with a slight blockage just here. Elbows are ball jointed. No wrists because the hands are moulded directly onto the forearm panels. Whoops. Ball jointed hips, but be careful, as you saw during the transformation, these can pop off if forced to the wrong angle. Instead of a thigh swivel, he has this folding joint here for transformation, which is a little bit loose on some parts of my figure. Pretty deep knee bend. .360-degree ankle rotation and ball jointed stalks on the heel spurs and the toes. So he is pretty poseable for a figure of this age. As with the G1 toy, Blurr's hood can mount on his arm as a shield, and pressing the button will still make the spring-loaded energy blade pop out. On my copy, the saw blade is on a bit of a hair trigger at the minute. Also, these two pegs on the back can be used to store the shield in robot mode. However, this does damage the silhouette a little, so be advised. I've already shown off size comparisons of Blurr's robot mode with Jazz and Ratchet in my Jazz review, so go back to that one to see what that looks like. And that just about wraps things up. As I said, it's a shame that the Vortex repaint got cancelled because, well, the fabric cape and a new head and a replaced faction symbol or two, and he would made a pretty good Batman, I have to say. But of course, there's always customization stuff that people can do. I personally am not going to do that because I prefer my Blurr as he is at the moment. And before I forget, this symbol here shows that Blurr is a member of the Elite Guard instead of just a normal Autobot. So, until next time, I have been Soundblaster1987, and I will be back next week with my review of Transformers Animated Cybertronian Ratchet, the Takara version, to conclude my animated eBay trilogy. Till all are one.